My name is Molly Googler. I'm the college archivist, and I'm here today with Deb McCasland, who's had a long experience with the college. Deb, could you tell us how you first heard about Yavapai College and what made you decide to be a student here?
Well, I was in high school, and the bond issue was passed to build the college, and went out to make it happen. And I was a senior in high school, and when they first started offering courses, so it was a financial need basically. I went out for a scholarship. First of all, I started as a part-time student during my senior year of high school at Prescott High.
Oh.
I took a math class. I took college algebra here, and my math teacher at the high school, Jack Orr, was the teacher of the course, and I had him for calculus. And I took the college algebra here, and we were all over the place at the high school, at the VA, here on campus. When they finally got some of the buildings opened, but they didn't have the lights out yet. So we would walk across planks over the mud and dirt with our flashlights, because it was a night course, and take our class. So we moved around quite a bit, and it was fun taking it. Quite a few of us from our class took it. And then when I applied for admission here, they had a Board of Governors scholarship, and it was based on your ACT scores. And mine were very high and qualified, so that took care of 2 years worth of tuition and books.
Oh, that sounds great.
But my parents couldn't afford to send me to college, and I did it all myself.
Well, good for you. I'm glad you did. Well, you've alluded to what it was like when the campus first opened with the planks of wood. Do you have any other memories of what it was like at the beginning? Did you start the first semester the school was open, or the second?
The second. I started spring of 70. It opened in fall of 69. So spring of 70 I took one course. Then I was a full-time student here in the fall of 70 after I graduated from high school. So it was a small campus, and you knew everybody because it was mostly Prescott kids or people from the area. Back then, Prescott High School had Chino Valley and Humboldt students there too. They didn't have their own high schools. So we knew everybody from around the area. And then we had the kids that were involved in sports, of course, were the newcomers. So they were the new folks, and they had the one dorm open. And I didn't live on campus. I had a little apartment, shared with another student here at the college, Karen Royster, and we had it was on Gurley Street, where the Gurley Street Grill is. We were upstairs, a little one-room place, and it worked. It was financially feasible to live on my own and go to college.
Well, that's great. Gave us some independence.
Yes. And then I worked part-time at the hospital, because at that time I thought I wanted to be a medical technologist. So I was working in that field in the lab, washing all the glassware. That's before they had disposable stuff.
Wow.
And helping there.
Well, that's great. What was the student-to-student interaction like?
Well, we had the dress code then, so you had to be careful. The girls had to wear the skirts and couldn't be too short, and the boys had to have their hair at a certain length. And that was challenged then by one of my officers. I think his name was Craig Stern, who challenged it, and then they dropped the dress code. But when I started here, we had the dress code. But it was small classes, really good instructors, just kind of like Yavapai is today, but on a smaller scale. We had the 4 main buildings, and it was fun.
Did you get to know your instructors very well?
Yes. And I had a Greg Fossum in my second year for calculus. It was 8 o'clock every day, 5 days a week. He's the only reason why I got up for class. So he's a nice-looking guy.
I understand. I had some professors in my college days, too. I enjoyed going to their classes.
Yes.
Well, that's great.
But when I was here, I really had an interest in science and math. And I was really good at math, so I was. My major changed at times, depending on different working situations and classes. So when I was here, I was majoring in math and science. Decided that medical technology wasn't for me. I didn't like the impersonal touch you had when you worked in the lab. You knew a lot about the person's life, but you weren't able to make any kind of personal connection. So I was majoring in science and math here. Took all anatomy and physiology, and one of my great accomplishments, I feel, is that I got an A both semesters from Dr. Roy Bronander. It was his first year here. He was outstanding. I had the best and hardest courses here at Yavapai College in all my college education through my master's program.
Really?
Yes.
Now,
Outstanding
when
teachers.
you say best, you mean the instructors?
I think the instructors were the best. I learned the most. I was the most challenged. And I felt I really accomplished a lot here.
Well, that's great to hear.
It's a good place.
What activities were you involved in on campus besides your classes?
I was involved in student government, and then I was a student body vice president. And Harley Lee was involved with us, and also Tenny.
Harold? Tenny?
Not Merle, it was
Harold?
Harold Tenny.
Now, what did student government do?
We bought the first bus that the college had that they used for athletics.
Oh.
We oversaw, there was like a student activities fee, so there was a budget for student government, and we would go on some small retreats, and at that time they had the legislative branch and the executive branch. So the legislative branch worked with the student parking tickets and such, and different student things, and the executive branch, we just worked with some student activities, and it was fun. And I've been in activities all the way through high school too, so it was just an easy progression. And then I was also involved with Associated Women Students, and I planned a national convention. I was the Western regional rep, so we got to go to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and work on this convention, and then go back then. And this was in the early 70s, and it was great fun. You know, because that's when the Equal Rights Amendment was such a big issue, and Gloria Steinem, and, you know, the real women's movement was active then at that time. So I was involved that way.
What was the national convention like? What sorts of things happened there?
Gloria Steinem spoke at it. It was all about women's issues and getting the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Wow.
And college women from all across the United States came into the convention.
Was that pretty exciting for you, being in such a huge environment?
Yes. And just the opportunity to travel on somebody else's dollar, it was great fun. And with student government, we would travel some, and mostly the first years it was just to Phoenix when I was a student, and then more so when I was back here as a staff person.
Well, that's good to hear that the college supported the students in these endeavors. That it wasn't just taking classes.
We voted to buy that first bus for the college.
That must have been quite an expense.
Yeah, I think it was $60,000 at the time, which was a lot. So it amortized over like about 10 years.
Wow, so how did you come up with the money for the bus?
The student fees money. There was a portion of what students paid for tuition that was considered student fees money.
Oh.
And we spent that.
When I've looked at some newspaper articles in archives, I came across one, if I'm remembering it correctly, that there came a point in time where the streets on campus needed to be named, and the administration, who I don't remember who was,
it would have been
the president
it was
then,
the very first one.
John Barnes.
Yes.
He gave the student government the authority to name the streets on campus. Do you remember anything about that?
I do, but I don't remember why we picked those names. I know who they represent, but I don't know why we went with the fallen peace officers. Except maybe because Harley Lee was very involved, and he was studying to be a police officer.
Well, when I came across that article, I was really impressed that the administration at that time gave the students the ability to name those streets, because it would be that name forever.
Yes.
I was very impressed that they wanted the students' input.
There was a lot of student involvement then.
That's great. Well, you already answered my question. You lived off campus.
Right.
What did you do after you left Yavapai College?
I went to here 2 years, and I had a car accident, and my voice was injured, and I had difficulty breathing, so I couldn't take a PE class, and it was your basic PE, because of my breathing problems. So when I had everything I needed to graduate except for PE. So I went to NAU, took bowling and archery, and social and round dancing, and then transferred back 2 credits to Yavapai to get my degree. So I went from Yavapai to NAU and was majoring in math. And we got into a math class where it was math theory. And he didn't do computations. I was a whiz at computations, did really well. But when you got to the theory, you had to prove why the associative and commutative laws were real, why they were true, by just using thoughts and theories. And the instructor was really poor, and I took a D in the class and thought, I don't want to be a math major. But I had enough credits to do it because I took the course over again and got a little bit better grade. I want to, I don't know what I want to do. So after my junior year at NAU, I dropped out of college, came back to Prescott, and went to Carol Ammerman, who was one of the advisors here. She and Bill Geip were the student advisors, and she had student activities. And I'd been involved with Carol as a student. She was our advisor for AWS, the Association of Women Students. And so I applied for a job as a secretary in her department. Now, I didn't have typing except for 1 year in middle school, and it's regular old typewriters, but she hired me because of my experience as a student involved in clubs and activities. So I worked for her, and I enjoyed the job, but I didn't like being a secretary. I wanted to be the boss.
Ah.
And I had seen where different students were here on voc rehab, vocational rehabilitation. Most of them were, alcoholics or drug addicts or had different difficulties in their lives, and vocational rehabilitation was putting them back through college for new training. So I figured with my voice, maybe I qualified. Checked it out, and I did.
Wow.
So they paid for my senior year of college, and then for my master's degree program too, because I decided to be a student activities director, it'd be best to have a master's degree. But first I had to get my bachelor's degree before I could finish it. And I was going through NAU's catalog and found a degree called Southwest Studies. It's a liberal arts degree, so all the different courses I'd taken, the math and science, and when I was a student here, I took a variety of courses, and when I was a staff member here, I also took a lot of art courses. I took sewing and woodworking and different things, and those counted towards my major at NAU. So I could transfer in my senior year, change my major, and still graduate in a year.
Wow.
And I had voc rehab to pay for it. So I lived in the dorms at NAU and went through the program there, got my bachelor's degree, and then worked in my master's. It was in guidance and counseling, with the emphasis and the overriding, the umbrella degree was community college education. And kind of a side on that, Dr. Calvin James was the college president when I was in student government. He came and interviewed in the spring of '72, and I happened to be the person that showed him around campus because I was in student government and I gave him a tour. And then when I was at NAU, he worked here for a couple years, came in, got things straightened out after John Barnes, and then he went back to NAU, and he was the head of the master's program, community college education. So he used to joke and say, Calvin James would say, I was the person that got him hired and fired.
Oh dear.
Here at Yavapai.
No, I didn't know that he got fired. I thought he chose to go to NAU.
He did. He chose to come here for a 2-year period. It was almost like a sabbatical from NAU to come down to Yavapai College and work. But when I was a student, I showed him the tours. When I was a staff person, I worked with him then with the student government and such. And then when I went on back for my senior year, actually he started there. It was during my master's work. Right after that, in 75, 74, it was 75. So I did my master's program with Dr. James. It was the very first year they offered it, and people had to have an internship with their program for the master's program. So you took the coursework and you took your classes in your specialization area. Mine was counseling and guidance. And then you would do an internship somewhere at a community college, kind of like teachers do an internship, but it's unpaid. But fortunately, Carol Ammerman left during the spring of '76, and I got my degree in the spring of '70s. Almost completed my degree. I just had to do the internship. So I applied for her job as a student activities coordinator at the time and got it. Wow. So I came and finished my degree my master's degree here, doing my internship as a student activities coordinator, and then that was in spring of August of '76 when I was hired here. I was 24. My students were, some of them were the same age I was.
Wow.
They were involved in student government. But it was great fun, and we went from there on up.
So have you been here the whole time?
76, yes.
On?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you have such a history here.
Yeah,
It's
part of the
amazing.
time when I started the job, I was single and unencumbered. By 1981, I had my first son and I was married. I got married in 81, had my first child in 82, and then in 86, I was pregnant with a second child. And we did everything. We did movies, dances, entertainment, trips. We would take trips to California on the bus that the student government bought. And we'd go to Disneyland in the spring and San Diego in the fall. And people could sign up and go, and it included your transportation, your housing, and a hotel there. And you would pay your own admission then to the different parks. So it was a great 3-day weekend. And so we did that. And it was just really a high level of activities. I was really busy here. And I decided I couldn't do it the way I needed to do it and have 2 babies and a husband. So I went part-time and just took the activities part of the job. By that time, I'd been elevated to be the student activities director, and I actually shared a secretary with Randy Powell, who was director of auxiliary services.
I remember him. Yeah.
And we were up in building 1 up on top when the bookstore was there. We were there, and then my office moved around the hall to where the mailroom was at one time. I was there before the mailroom. And then they built the mailroom in that room. That was in the hallway going to the cafeteria. And then I got moved into the game room area just across from that in building 1 still. So I was there on a part-time basis doing the performing arts part of the job, because that's what I really enjoyed the most. And I mean, I loved doing student activities, but it was a challenge working with students and their changing needs and interests. So with the performing arts, it was a nice way to focus on just one aspect of the job.
Now, what did the performing arts include?
Well, we were using the student center. We would do up at the student center. We would have portable stage, portable lights, portable sound system. We would have lectures and different entertainers. At that time, there was a community concert group in Prescott doing the folk music and different things, and they were having financial problems. So we joined together, the college and the community concerts, called our group Friends in Concert.
Oh, that's a nice name.
So the college had more of the financial underwritings, and we branched out from community concerts, and because they used to have, this is Prescott, this is Tuesday, this is the show you're going to present. They didn't have a lot of flexibility. So by leaving community concerts and working with the college, we were able to bring in a variety of things and able to expand what the college was offering for entertainment. Because I wouldn't do symphonies because I didn't want to compete with the Yavapai Symphony Association. We didn't do the classical or the folk music because that's what community concerts presented. So by joining together, we could do classical, folk, entertainment, and a lot of different things.
So did you bring groups in from outside then?
Yes. From the very beginning in '76, we were bringing in different groups. There was a project called Art in Arizona Towns. It was through the Arizona Commission on the Arts, and the project was funded by the National Endowment for the Arts. It was a pilot project. There were 6 Arizona communities that did it. Prescott was one of the 6. And we started offering a week, 6 times a year. We would bring an artist in, and they would work in the schools and community, and in that with a public performance for the college.
Oh. Imagine that was pretty exciting for the
It was.
community, because at that time there wasn't a lot of
There wasn't a lot
outside
of culture,
influence
right?
coming in.
They had the Yavapai Symphony Association bringing in the Phoenix Symphony. They had the community concerts bringing in about 5 or 6 programs a year. And then the college had the artist in residence. We had a saxophonist, Harvey Patel. We had a blues artist, Robert Cray, and his band. We had one group called the New Theater. And it was the 2 men doing different theater productions. This is when Dr. Russo was president. And they came to town and they were selling drugs out of their hotel room.
Well,
So in that week of also doing programs for school children and such, they got caught dealing drugs out of their hotel room. So Dr. Russo said there's no way we can present something like that. So we just canceled their public performance and ended it as soon as we realized what they were doing and been arrested.
Oh, wow.
They were out of jail in time to do the show, but we said no.
No, we don't do things like that around here.
But we had Mike Seeger, who's the brother of Bob Seeger, but Mike did the auto harp or the harmonica, and he had the Jew's harp that he would twang with his mouth. They sold out of those in town because the kids were so enthralled by him playing the auto harp that they wanted to have one just like it. And we had some performances. We were all over town. We were in the student center. We were at the Sacred Heart Church for some. We were at the YMCA where they had their skating rink. So we'd set up chairs in there and a sound system. We had some shows there. We were at the Hendricks Auditorium. And just in the outdoors, too. We had different things. We had Francine Reed, who was a jazz artist from Phoenix. She and her band were here. And we did concerts on the square during the daytime.
Wow, that must...
We'd go to the Pioneer Home sometimes and the Adult Center, Prescott Adult Center, when it was on Aubrey Street. And we were just all over the place.
That must have taken a lot of coordination.
It did.
These different venues.
So in 1986, when I went part-time, I could just focus on the performing arts. And then we were using the Elks Theater at that time, too. It had been reopened, and the college we were the leasers of the building. And it first started out, it was from Ted and Shireen Lamb.
Oh.
They owned the theater and leased it to the college to use. And then the Arizona Community Foundation bought the building from them, and they leased it to the college for $1 a year. All we had to do was keep it open and working. Wow. So that was a nice location then to move our programming to. And then the bond issue came on the Performance Hall for a farsighted Board of Governors at that time, and Paul Walker, who was the president. And the bond was passed, and we have our beautiful Performance Hall. Now, I wasn't involved in the planning of it. Dr. Walker had a community group, and he pretty much planned the building himself. But he would have the advisory group then come in for pictures. And we could look at the blueprints and see what he had planned for us.
Oh.
But by his efforts, we have a wonderful hall. And
it is nice.
Greatly used. And at that point, he said, bring in the big shows. And I was still working part-time at the time. And we'd spend up to maybe $2,500, $4,000 for an artist. Really small budget things. Because between the student activities money and the little bit of money that we would charge for the shows, we would pay the artist fees, but there was no overhead cost. The college paid my salary as the student activities director or the performing arts manager, and we just, I guess, called community events manager.
So when the performance hall was built, you just automatically assumed the responsibilities of bringing in the shows for that?
Yes.
And were you still working part-time?
Yes.
Wasn't that really difficult for you? Wasn't
It was
that a
busy.
huge job?
It was busy. In fact, it worked back into a full-time job, and then later, under Dr. Daly, I was approved as a full-time employee. So I was part-time for about 5 or 6 years. Still working for the college, but not in a full-time position. And presenting the arts. And then our first big show of an artist with reserved seating was Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh.
And it was a success, and we spent $10,000 for his artist fee, which was a big gulp. Because our artist fee budget had been like maybe $30,000 for the year, and then it jumped up to $150,000 and climbed up to where it's a $1 million business.
Wow. How did you? I'm fascinated. How did you go about getting the acts?
Well, there are different conventions out there. We worked a lot through, as a student government advisor, we moved from as a student government, where they had the 3 branches of government, executive, legislative, and whatever the other one is.
Judicial?
Judicial, yes, excuse me. Very good, Melanie. and moved more into programming. But we'd go to different conventions, and there was one called the National Association for Campus Activities. And they would have artist showcase. They would do their shows live on a stage. You get like a 20-minute clip. They had an exhibit hall where you could go and talk with the artist and discuss prices and availability. And then you also did block booking, where other colleges in the state or in the area would try to bring in an artist for a specific amount of time. And, like 4 days in a row, and he'd be here, here, here. We would save on the travel expenses. So that was one group. And then it was called, it had to do with college unions, Association of College Unions International. And they had conventions on the regional level and on the national level. And so same with the NACA, the Campus Activities Group. So I got involved as a volunteer with NACA, and we would take the students to the conventions and watch the acts showcase. Riders in the Sky was one we first saw back in 1981.
Wow,
we booked them here.
They're here this year.
They're going to be
right?
here this year, yes, in November. And we booked them through the years ever since then. But it started with a student government convention in San Antonio, Texas. And we saw them and liked them. They were one of the showcases. And we made a deal and booked them in. And their fee really through the years hasn't changed that much, because they love to perform and they remember their friends from the past that helped them get to where they are today.
That's great. So, are you still the one responsible for booking the acts?
I book the shows.
So do you still do the same?
I still do conventions. When I got more into the performing arts, I dropped more of the student government or student activities kind of activities, like with NACA, and went into an organization called Western Arts Alliance, where it's just the performing arts. And then I also go to a national convention that's called the Association of Performing Artists. And so the WA conference, the Western Arts Alliance, is in the West in the fall. Next year it'll be in Phoenix. This year it was in Seattle, Washington. And then, so that's like a 4-day conference. Again, watching them perform, talking with the agents, and trying to make bookings of other communities in the area. And then I go to the national one in January in New York and do more of that. Looking at the artist, seeing some shows, getting a broader exposure to what the arts are, and continue booking.
Now you must see a wide range of
I do.
different types of music and performers. How do you choose which ones? I imagine cost is a factor.
Cost is a factor. What I think, saleability. Would our community like to see that type of an artist? And in the very beginning, the students helped make those choices. Now I have an advisory group that is composed of people from the community. Many of them are our platinum donors, our $10,000 and up donor. Many of them are smaller donors, but all of them come to our shows. A lot of shows are just 1 or 2 shows. But I screen the artist, do some preliminary negotiations on pricing and possible dates, and then I show these different groups through DVDs, online applications, or CDs, and have them help me review the artist and do they think you'd like it or not. And it's advisory only. I work with my boss, and now I also work with a community events advisory committee, financial oversight committee, and they help make those final decisions. So I've done this is my 32nd year now working at the college, presenting the arts. I'm really proud of what I've created.
I think you should be.
Through the community events, it started with 6 artists, 1 week each, a budget of $6,000.
What is the budget now?
It's the artist fees are about $600,000.
Wow.
And then you have all your other costs on top of that, so it's over $1 million.
So you've got your marketing and...
So I used to do
publicity.
Oversaw ticket sales, all the marketing, supervision of the staff, and when we moved into the performance hall, I was the one full-time employee, and then I had 4 part-time employees, which was a big step up because I used to only have 1 part-time person. But we brought our own ticketing service in, and we actually sold the tickets, and I would program the tickets in and all the information, and I would sell tickets, and we would have 1 to 2 other people selling tickets at the same time as I did. And when you entered the performance hall, there wasn't a ticketing office built. What it was a very small cubbyhole, because Dr. Walker's envision at that time was it would be reserved, no reserved seating, just general admission on the shows. So you'd have tickets out in the community.
Mm-hmm.
People would buy them there, and what they didn't buy, they'd sell them at the door at the show that night. So we just needed a little ticket booth.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no office for personnel. I was operating still out of the student center in Building 1. But to do a reserved ticketing system, which really a building of that caliber needed, and it helped give a great spark to all of our donor programs. Because we would, from 25 to, what's the highest ones, $500. Annual contributions is what we had. And we would bring in maybe a couple $1,000s a year, annual contributions.
Mm-hmm.
But once we got the reserved ticketing system and incorporated our Performing Arts Charitable Endowment to where every donation goes into the endowment, we don't touch the principal. We just use the monies that are accrued from that to come back and help support the programs. Because this Art in Arizona Towns involves bringing students to the campus. Now, before we used to do it at the Elks, or we go into the schools, but students are exposed K through 12 with these artists that we'd bring on campus. So they would see a very talented artist doing a program for them during their school time day, and then they would conclude with an evening residency. So PACE helps support the residency programs very well each year because it's so important. And we serve 20 to 24,000 students a year through that.
That's amazing.
So we help with the arts education in the public schools and building our audiences of the future.
So you've got the artist residency programs, you've got the
PACE
acts
is now.
that come in.
We have the shows.
Is there another venue that the performance hall participates in, or those two?
Those basically are it. Now that we have the performance hall.
That sounds like a pretty full schedule.
It is. It keeps people very busy. And one year I had 45 different shows. Way too many performances. We ended up competing with ourselves.
Now,
This season we have about 24.
Do you introduce each act when
Yes.
they come?
Mm-hmm.
What a commitment for you.
Well, I need to be there to evaluate them
Uh-huh.
and meet them and work with them. And I've met some amazing people through the years.
Do you have any acts that stick out in your mind more than others?
Well, one show that the artist was just so gracious and did a wonderful job for us was Randy Travis. We've had him here twice.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just a true gentleman. Just really nice and thinks of others, does a great show, has sold well for us. Itzhak Perlman last year was just an amazing occurrence. That one happened because the Jewish Community Foundation, some of the elders on their board, came to me and said, we want to make a gift to our community. We want to bring in some notable world-class artists, underwrite the program, help you out financially, and make this present this artist as a gift to our community. And they wanted to start with Itzhak Perlman. I had never dreamed of bringing him in.
Uh-huh.
You have different dreams, but he had never been one that I just thought we couldn't touch him.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to my Western Arts Alliance conference and talked with the agent that represented him. And they said, well, he needs to have a couple of bookings, and his fee is this, plus there's more additional for his jet, because he travels in a private jet.
Mm-hmm.
So that year we weren't able to bring in Mr. Perlman, but the Jewish Community Foundation wanted to make a gift that year. So they said, well, how about a world-class orchestra? So we brought in the Moscow State Symphony Orchestra, and they helped underwrite that one. And we had it here for our community, and it was a full house and truly a gift to our community. Then another member of the committee came to me and said, what is your dream show? Who would you love to present if the money was no object? I said, I've always wanted to present Bill Cosby. So he said, well, let me check on it. And he came back in a couple days and said, make your offer. I've got your underwriting.
Wow.
So we made the offer. We brought in Mr. Cosby. 2 sold-out shows, excellent attendance. The first year we brought him in, and it was great.
I could see how he would be very popular.
Mm-hmm.
in this community.
Yes, and he was a hoot, and they're very easy to work with. I mean, they have very specific things, but it's fun working with the artist. And as the series grew, my part-time staff grew into full-time staff, and now they have a nice. And then we had added more part-timers, and at one point we had about 45 people involved with our volunteers and ushers for the shows and ticket takers and ticket sellers. And
a lot of coordination on your part. Did you have a chance to meet most of the artists yourself? Wow.
And I have a lot of pictures of myself with great stars.
Oh, that just sounds really exciting. So now, but you're doing something a little different now, aren't you? You've moved into working for the foundation, is that correct? What do you do there?
I book the shows, and then I also fundraise for the college. So about half of my job is involved with the artist selection, and then in negotiating the contracts and getting set up, and then that goes to the community events office staff to take over the implementation. And then the other half of my time I spend fundraising for the Yavapai College Foundation.
What kinds of things do you do for that?
Talk to people, try to get major gifts, ask people to put us in their will. We have a legacy league where people would say, in my will, I leave a percentage of my estate or a sum of money from my estate that would go to Yavapai College. And they can further say, I want this to go to nursing scholarships or community events for PACE, or unrestricted to the foundation, or whatever they'd like.
Now, do you have anything to do with the sculpture garden?
Not directly. The Friends of Art have done that, and Friends of the Sculpture Garden have done the major fundraising. I assist in what ways I can, especially when I'm talking to people if they have an interest in art, encourage them to possibly make a gift to help with the acquisition of their sculptures.
With the fundraising for the foundation, do you find that most of the funds come from local folks, or have you gotten responses from companies or individuals outside of the county?
Some. It depends on what you're helping present. Blue Cross Blue Shield helped us when we worked at the Jewish Community Foundation again and brought in the Burning the Fires of Hate, the book exhibit, and the information about the Holocaust. They were the event underwriter that helped that happen. Steve Walker was the one that mainly got that contribution. But they may work with us in collaboration on other activities. With the community events programs, we have a whole host of local businesses that help us present them, either with the trade of services, hotels, advertising, food, cars, to just outright cash gifts to be a season sponsor.
Is there anybody in the county you don't know?
Well, a lot of the new folks I don't. But, I go through around town and I know so many people. Either they know me, recognize me from being on stage, or they've worked with me, or, or I grew up where they knew me, or my parents. Because I lived here since 1962 in Prescott.
Well, you've had such a, I can't think of the word I want to say, such a prominent, you are one of the faces of Yavapai College.
I would agree with that.
When people think of Yavapai College, I'm sure your face comes to their mind.
Yes.
That's great. I think that's a wonderful heritage to have. This may be a little difficult question. What has been your greatest challenge, either as a student here or a staff member?
Well, I recently moved my office within the building 32. And when the maintenance guys were moving, they said, "How many times have you moved?" And I said, "Well, I've had more bosses than I've moved offices." So I think just adapting to different leadership styles, working with different people's personalities and such. There have been challenges through the years, and many people have experienced this with the college. We've had our ups and downs, and I would say just trying to do my job, trying to keep this program going, because there were some people that said, wipe it out. We don't need it. We don't want it. Where I fought and fought to keep it going.
Well, I think the Performance Hall is such a wonderful service to the community. I mean, when you think of a college, you think of artistic expression, besides the classes and students and things like that, but you also think of art and performances and music.
Well, it's one of the strategic initiatives of the college this year. For that 10-year plan, it's a vibrant, cultural and entertaining, artistic community. And we definitely help do that. Of course, with all of our art classes, too, and music courses here at the college. But the performing arts programming is part of that. We touch the community in many ways.
You do. And I'm glad that the Performance Hall has been able to persevere through ups and downs of different administrations and thoughts and philosophies. So that's great.
It's a struggle, and it continues to be a struggle financially, because just the ticket sales and the money we get from PACE and other grants that we gather don't pay the whole cost. It never has, and I don't think it ever will. I don't know. There aren't any other communities out there with a program like this, or colleges, that pay all the cost of the program. So the college is underwriting it, and it has underwritten for many years.
Well, I imagine the overhead is pretty tremendous.
Yes.
I mean, just running the building, paying for the artist, as you say, and then I'm sure there's 100 other costs that go into...
Well, just, the staffing cost is the biggest part of it. You need people to make it work.
What personal accomplishments here have brought you the most pride or satisfaction?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, getting that A out of Dr. Bronander for 2 semesters.
Hey, congratulations.
I thought that was a great goal, great accomplishment. Graduating from Yavapai College, I think, was another step. And then creating the performing arts program here at the college, our artist in residence program, and all the entertainers that we see here. That's my baby. It started with me. It's my life work. And I hope it doesn't end when I leave here. I hope that it carries forward.
I hope so, too.
But it's definitely what I have created, and nobody told me how to do it. Nobody said do this and this. It was, through trial and error, it's what it is today because of me.
That's great. I mean, that's wonderful.
And it definitely takes more than just me to make the program successful, but I'm the only one that's been with it all the way through.
That's a wonderful legacy for you.
I think so.
I'm
really proud of it.
When you think of a career, I think it's wonderful if somebody feels like they can leave a legacy that they're very proud of. And it sounds like you've got one. What was the biggest change that you've seen at the college?
Physically, it's huge. From the 4 original buildings to the beautiful campus we have today, that I think is the biggest change. Different leaders, it's up and down. Some I felt were here for the good of the college, and some I felt were here for the good of themselves. I think Dr. Horton is a great leader for the college and is here for the good of the college. So I think we've kind of gone around in circles and come back to our base, and he really wants to serve the community. And I think that's the best part of Yavapai College, is the service we give to our community. We have touched so many people's lives in so many positive ways. Me as a student and a staff person, but the students you see that go through here that start out with nothing, get an education, and they're so very successful. And many of them are, when I was in school here, we have state legislator, Bennett, and who may be running for governor in the future, but he was a great leader of the Senate, and he was one of our graduates. We have radio announcers. We have real estate people. We have wonderful nurses. We have doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs.
Probably so.
Ernie took courses here. Ernie Jones. So Yavapai College has been such a blessing to Yavapai County that it was started up, Opa Allen and her vision and earnest struggles. When I went to her funeral, I talked with one of her kids, and she said, I remember taking around the petitions, going door to door to get people to sign, yes, we want a community college in Yavapai County.
I know in Roy Campbell's interview, he was on the steering committee to get the college going, and then he was on the original governing board for, I think, about 10 years or so, 8 years, 10 years. But to sum it all up, he thought that Yavapai College has had the greatest influence on Yavapai County than any other thing in the county.
So. I would agree. One of my courses at NAU was studying it was an independent study, and I studied the economic history of Yavapai County. What made, and specifically Prescott, work. And it was, people wanted to be here. Tourism was part of it, but until the college started up, we had the hospital, we had tourism, and that was about it. And we, of course, Whipple with the VA hospital, and then there were Yavapai Regional Medical Center. But Yavapai College has been an economic boon to the county, I feel, and also then just, make people's lives different, improve their lives. Students might start out in a car with not even a home that they're living in, take the classes, get a training or a degree, move on either to a four-year university or go right into the workforce. And we've made a positive change in their lives.
I remember I had a student worker in the library, 87 or so. He was living in his car, but he really wanted an education, and he had somehow made it work so that he could sign up for classes and take them, but he had no home except for his car. So I agree with you. I think we have had a tremendous influence. I feel like you've had such a rich history here at the college that I probably left out a lot of things. Is there anything else you want to talk about that I didn't cover?
The years as being the student activities director was such fun because I was so involved with students. We would travel together to conventions, and I really got hooked. Again, I mentioned with AWS, but as the student government advisor, I could take them all over the place. We went to national conventions, we went to regional conventions, we had state meetings, and the growth I would see in those students with that experience. Many of them had never been out of Prescott, and to take them to another state was really great fun, and help them learn. This is how you eat at a fancy restaurant. These are the forks you use at a formal dinner. I took one student to Washington D.C. We visited the historical sites, and it was a lecture conference, so heard many different lecturers speak, and then possibly brought some of them back to the college. But the working with the students very closely, I miss that now, and I missed it for quite a few years since I moved just into performing arts, because I don't have that student involvement. So it's that was great. The working with them, creating so many activities, lots of wonderful memories, and taking my kids when they were little on the bus with us when we take the trips to California.
Do they remember those trips?
They were pretty small. Nathan does a bit, but Sarah doesn't at all, because I went back, I moved into the performing arts and left student activities when she was born. So she has no memory of that. But she came to a lot of different shows, and they would meet different artists. And we had Charlie Pride one time, and Sarah had a big gap in her teeth. She's my daughter that was born in '86. And Charlie was standing up on stage going, "Me too." And Pat Boone had a bunch of roses in his show. He always got a dozen roses. He gave some flowers to Sarah. And when Michael Banner Williams, who was just here, he's an Appalachian storyteller. I have a picture. We took him to a child care center where Sarah was going, among other places in the community. But there's a picture of Sarah sitting on his knee as he's telling the story to all the other little kids. So they've attended a lot of shows and grown up with me through the years.
That's great.
Attending the arts. And going to different conventions. When Sarah was younger, I would take her to meetings or conventions with me with the the campus activities group. And it's just, I feel like I have positively impacted people's lives in many ways.
Too. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really
Thank you, Molly.
appreciate this. Thank you.